Games in the stalker genre, or perhaps subgenre of survival horror, Demento, Amnesia, Clock Tower and the subject of this video, are driven by a question. Why run? Though not anything resembling an official term, this breed of horror game hinges on the cat-and-mouse chase as its central form of enemy conflict, with puzzle solving through navigational backtracking acting as the other. By no means new, the style seems to have exploded in popularity with the recent rise in defenseless horror game protagonists. In games such as these, you work your way through levels or smaller areas within a larger interconnected level, interacting with the environment's riddles to find the way to escape. Since your character has either very little or no means to defend themselves, avoiding your enemies is key, which you can do through timing, distraction, staying out of sight, wounding your enemies, or stunning them temporarily. Challenging though this is, the space in which you are trapped, unfamiliar, sprawling, claustrophobic, it should set a disorienting stage that only adds to the challenge. It should take all of your energy and wits to memorize, so that you can track backwards to move forwards and forge a path to freedom from the threat. Remothered Tormented Fathers does much the same, but manages to stand apart from the many other games of this kind out there right now. Why? How? The answer lies in the initial question. For starters, Dr. Felton's rambling house and the setting of Remothered works very well in the role of prison puzzle. Visually arresting, with its fusty air, heavy drapes and age-stained wallpaper, it's exactly the sort of place you'd expect decades-old secrets to be hiding. Not that you'd easily uncover them. Notice how the house's decor, statues, plants, paintings, and furniture resembles other objects. So much so, they're hard to differentiate. Now, the residence is spread across 3 main floors, with a basement level and attic space. And where the floors follow the same general plan, with the broken elevator at its centre, there are several subtle differences concerning important rooms or areas, such as the placement of Felton's office, the kitchen downstairs, or the door leading to the dining hall corridor. As such, the setting makes great use of symmetry and repetition in terms of architecture and cosmetic design to thoroughly throw you off the scent and scramble your sense of direction. Sound travels in this old house as well. Where it might sound like a door is opening right behind you, it may in fact be on the floor above or below.
Where did I put the damn pills?
Further throwing off any sense you might have of where you need to move and when you should take that risk. A good case could be made for how bouncing sound negatively affects play. However, this misdirection forces you in and out of hiding when you aren't absolutely certain it's wise or safe. By cleverly using this auditory sleight of hand, it vastly increases the chance of an enemy encounter, and your stress levels as a result. This kind of trial and error also helps you to learn an enemy's stalking pattern, where they will be, and roughly when. Travelling sound or no, and as is typical, Remothered's gameplay requires you to take mental notes of where you saw the first part of a puzzle, like an empty fuse box for instance, so that when you find the second piece of the puzzle, the fuse, you know where to go and how to use it. This is key to survival and progression. In a rather more intriguing way though, Remothered gives you a sizable head start at this. It does so through its cunningly paced introduction during your first task in the game, to find Mrs. Felton's room. It's in this introduction that you're able to comb the house and its many open rooms, finding broken ladders and distractible objects to throw, ropes to brace doors, hiding spots, and more before you reach the room. This process isn't cursory. Outside of meticulous exploration, Rosemary's tentative steps means the physical act of moving about takes a long while. It also means you'll be listening to an old record, Memory of You, on loop for just as long. Excruciating, yes, but it serves a purpose. It steadily cranks your nerves up to an unendurable high, setting the stage for the heart palpitations to come. The music, slow steps, the distant sound of rolling thunder. Remothered's first 15 minutes of play keeps you suspended in a state of vigilance, but it acts as your mental map too, giving you the time to lay your foundation. It says, use this time wisely, and it will serve you well later on. And boy, does it. So, through symmetry and misdirection, sound, pacing and atmosphere, Felton's house beautifully embodies what makes this kind of horror so good, not to mention difficult. The only thing more important than the setting in games like this comes from the effectiveness of its antagonists. Without either of these, you have no reason to run or escape. No real sense of dread in the face of fear, and this form of horror needs a racing heartbeat to work. Without it, you wouldn't keep moving, nor would you fumble or take the wrong turn, which can pad out play, increase the difficulty, force you to pay better attention to surroundings, among other things. An enemy's physicality in more action-oriented games, by contrast, across the board but in horror as well, is used to draw your fire and aggression, animated in a way to test your skills, mettle, arsenal, and deplete your resources. Take the necromorphs of Dead Space. Their spindly appendages and exaggerated weak spots tie into dismemberment play. Antagonists within the stalker, or cat and mouse genre, however, must embody the feeling of impending, unstoppable doom. Though complex backtracking, exploration, and puzzles feature, the chase serves as anchor point. The more effective, the better, and an enemy's design or modus operandi can change the feel of the chase dramatically. Remothered understands this. Its collection of eerie, almost phantasmagorical enemy designs keep you running, and fast. More importantly, however, they are generally framed within the game's setting to maximum effect. The house and its antagonists tend to support one another. Dr. Felton is the game's starter enemy. Because of his illness, he cannot see well in concentrated or bright light, but can operate very well in shadow, one great strength to counteract his weakness. He serves as your introduction to how the game operates, how to avoid enemies, use distractions, weapons. He doesn't really test the player, as other antagonists do, but as I mentioned previously, his one unique attribute is used beautifully in conjunction with momentary darkness. Even though the house itself doesn't change, rooms don't move or transform as in, say, Bloober Team's Layers of Fear, its state changes by removing your light source. This puts you as the player at an immediate disadvantage, making what should be an easy task, to make your way back to the switchboard on the ground floor, much more difficult. It does so by playing directly into your antagonist's strength, that he can see where you're going much better than you can. This segment may be short, but it foreshadows the kinds of difficulties you will face throughout the game. Each antagonist is planted in a similar sort of way and to great effect. Whatever their strength, the house plays into it somehow, thus putting you at an even greater disadvantage. And just as the shift in power takes place, the chase or confrontation will commence. Let's take a look at the second antagonist, the Red Nun. She resembles a great hammerhead with that ominous broad-tipped hat, the tassels of which completely obscure her identity beyond religiosity. She sweeps about the halls of Felton's mansion in a blood-red cloak, the colour of malice and wrath, and a clothing item that adds so much stately bulk to her frame. She is the most physically imposing enemy you face, an apex predator. According to the game's wiki, she only stands at 5'7". Yet because of her clothing and silhouette, she visibly occupies much more space. The Red Nun appears larger, visual trickery at its finest. Though her role directly ties into the mythology and backstory of Remothered and therefore plays an essential narrative function, it's one that also carries cultural substance, which only adds to the threat she presents. Whatever your association, chances are you probably have an opinion of or an experience with nuns. Whether or not they're to be revered or feared, the sight of a religious figure carries significance. This foreboding antagonist largely occupies the main areas of the house, mammoth landings, or looming large in big open doorways. Though she can rush into smaller rooms if she spots you, it makes crossing these exposed areas much more dangerous, not only because there is very little in the way of hiding places or cover, but because where Rosemary is cautious, even when running, which attracts attention and therefore danger, the nun makes huge strides in half the time. This antagonist occupies the largest of spaces, leaving you completely vulnerable. Then we have Jennifer, the game's third antagonist. Somewhat oddly coordinated, she's intimidating in much the same way Ringu's Sadako is, when she crawls out from the well and toward your television screen. Jennifer is actually taller than the Red Nun by quite a significant margin, but presents an entirely unique threat. What makes her so frightening is not so much her towering stance, but startling unpredictability. A completely different style of behaviour. And what counteracts explosive instability better than small spaces? There are several moments in the game when you are, quite cleverly, and unlike your encounters with the Red Nun or even Felton, trapped in a small or narrow space with her. If she spots you, it gets scary very quickly as she spirals into violent rage and upset. You first see her in a cramped stairwell, before following her to a small attic space where a ladder is your only path out. Again, in a modest TV room. Notice how the area in which she sits is visibly boxed in by the sideboard and shelves. And again in a wine cellar, a dreadfully narrow maze of walls, within which you have to locate valve handles to open the way forward. Where the nun stalks you in her dark, sinister sort of way, the landings giving her heavy presence space to breathe. Jennifer thrashes through the scenery, shrinking your window of opportunity to flee. Each of these antagonists are reminiscent of a Safehead encounter in Shinji Mikami's The Evil Within. A finely tuned segment of play, it emphasises the creature's ability to revive itself once downed by placing the confrontation in a sewer maze, filled with thick steam, where you must backtrack to move forward, find missing items, and all while outrunning your endlessly respawning opponent. Sebastian isn't simply the weaker of the two, overpowered by a stronger adversary, but at the mercy of the area in which he is cornered with said enemy. Remothered takes this principle and applies it to all four of the game's antagonists within the Stalker template, their distinctive physicalities and personalities affecting the atmosphere in different ways. Moreover, Remothered tends to utilise both its setting as well as its antagonists. To follow the rules of the genre, yes, but to fine-tune and reinvigorate it as well. This is the kind of design approach that makes horror games of the cat and mouse variety truly something to scream about, while running away. Is it any wonder that Keiichiro Toyama, designer and creator of the treasure trove of innovative mechanics that is the Siren series, fell in love with the game? Remothered executes a very effective strategy in terms of the chaser's conflict, and does so with a kind of imagination we aren't seeing more broadly. The game lets loose its most overwhelming character in the vast hallways of the house, traps you in tight spaces with the most volatile, and plunges you into darkness with the most perceptive. Why run indeed? Hello and thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. Please feel free to leave your thoughts on Remothered or horror games or anything really in the comment section below. I try to read and respond to as many comments as I humanly can. Now, as you can see, there are some names etched above my head in this video. These people I want to thank very much for their support, because without them this video would not have been made, it would not have seen the light of day. So thank you for your support. I want to give a special shout out to Brandon Smith, Bryson Brody, Christopher Cotton, Day Yang, Elian, Hampus Dahlstedt, Jacob White, Jessica Costello, Marlon, Michael Smith, Michael Rivera, and of course, That's Lemons. Your generosity is astounding. Thank you. Now I'll see you all very soon in my next video, which will drop over the next couple of weeks. I'm not entirely sure when yet, so keep your eyes peeled for that. I'm still streaming, although I'm changing my schedule ever so slightly, so again, keep your eyes peeled for that announcement, probably on Twitter. Again, thank you for watching, and I will see you all very, very soon. Goodbye for now.